Hello. Good,
Hi, Piero.
good. How are
How are
you?
you? I'm very well, thank you. It's great to see you today. Um, Now, for those people that are joining us afresh, this is BioFutures, and this is a series that is all about the ways in which biomaterials, biodesign, biotechnology, among other things, can potentially shape our future. This series is focused on the body, health, and well-being. And so a number of individuals have been invited to the series who I think are seminal in their field, of which, Piero, you are one. For those people that don't know your work, and I would say to you that if you don't know Piero's work, then definitely take a look at his site straight after this podcast, or if you've got a couple of devices to hand, then bring it up, and so that you can actually see and relate to what we're going to talk about. But
Lovely to
it's
see
lovely
you
to see
too.
you today.
Yes, I am.
Are
I
you in
am.
London today?
I am. What a beautiful weather.
You are, you are.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, it's quite warm. I'm currently in France at the moment, and it's
Fantastic.
pretty warm here,
Yeah.
so it's a nice change, isn't it? Now, for the people that don't know who you are, I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit about your background. Firstly, how did you get involved with fashion and
Well,
textiles?
okay. Well, I I got okay. So let's start from the very beginning, and maybe we can go back in time when I was in Rome, maybe like I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, something like that. So when I started, it just happened like that by mistake to, I didn't have much money and I needed to make a costume. I thought I couldn't sew at all. I couldn't do anything. And I was like, okay, what should I do? And then, I don't know, I just went to shop. I remember it was a very like cheap shower curtain and start creating. So after then it's been just like a long journey. Then took me to London, wanting to study fashion. Then I've done my year in foundation where I start exploring fashion and textile, and that's where I was like, oh, I like the idea of textile and materials. I like the materiality. I think that's always something where I start. And then I decided to take my bachelor in textile. There I start exploring the idea of science and technology, but was more from um, from an aesthetics perspective. And then in the moment that I went to the Royal College of Art, there was a module where I could actually learn and about biodesign. So I was passionate about science technology, but I couldn't really give a name yet until I said, okay, that's biodesign. That's what I want to do, and I start exploring. And since then, I never really stopped. And then it really shaped my interest. And explore and understand, mixing the bio aspect, the biotechnology aspect into textile, into fashion, into art, and see, playing with all of those disciplines, and see what could come out of it. So yes, then I start really liking the idea of asking to myself what will happen, what could happen if we start applying biotechnology into fashion. How could it shape fashion? Would it be the same as we know it today, or would it change, both from a from an aesthetic point of view, but also from a functional point of view? In a moment that I start realizing it's not just the inspiration, but also the function of a specific living organism that perhaps you can implement into design. So so I mean, that's really, I think it's been just like, yes, it's a growing journey, which starts in a very, grow it in a very organic way, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's the best way to start. I
Yeah.
did laugh when you said shower curtain. I know how shower curtains are to work with, because I once, many years ago, it was a psycho-themed Halloween party, and I decided to go to the character that was stabbed in the shower scene, but after she'd been stabbed. And so I got a shower, slashed it, strategically pinned it to myself over nude underwear, and just covered myself in blood.
Amazing.
And it looked amazing, but but I have to say, it was an absolute nightmare to wear, because actually shower curtains are quite heavy. They're deceptively heavy. And it was a very difficult fabric to work with. So if you started there, then that's a good start, because you had a
And
tough
everything was done by hand, because
foundation.
at that time I didn't even know what a sewing machine, how to even switch, where the switching button was. So it's
You
that
didn't know
in
how to
a
turn the sewing
very,
machine on.
I think I also kind of kept, the attitude in a way, like, just go for it without really, I think probably, yes, I kind of kept the attitude in my design process. Yeah.
Mm. Your start reminds me of a good friend of mine, the milliner Louis Mariette. Louis started off in another field, and then he, like you, he gave design a go, really loved it, and then, well, the rest is history. Today he's a very established designer. But I think that your journey is particularly interesting, because you started off giving it a go, seeing, the possibility, having an idea, not having any training, and then actually through that process you've ended up at the Royal College of Art, which is arguably one of the seminal institutions in the world, and certainly one of the absolute best places to be doing biomaterials and biodesign. Yeah, really, really good pedigree. When I look at your work, there are a couple of things that really stand out to me. I think the first is the fact I love the way that you have worked and experimented with a number of different organic materials, and the quality of those organic materials is quite different. And the other thing is, I feel your work is very sculptural. Feels to me like you could have been, if you were to apply your talents elsewhere, it would be something that is very three-dimensional. It would be something that's got form. And that's very much in the Italian genre, because that's obviously terms of design. Italians are known for that. But I wanted, when you've been working with the different biomaterials, how have you found that as a designer? What are the sort of challenges? What are the sort of opportunities? What have you kind of learned through working with different biomaterials?
Well, definitely none are the same. So I think it was really important to understand the material, but in general, it's something, I think it's in my approach, understanding the material. But in this particular case, like in biodesign, there was an extra layer, in the sense that I had to learn about a living organism. So it wasn't just about the tactility of the actual fabric, or whatever the material was going to use, but it was really important to understand how the organism function. So that was an extra layer that I had to add up on my work. And the challenges are all different. Like, for example, with lichens, I don't know, you will have to wait ages before you grow. So you cannot, and in the moment that when I start, for example, one of the struggle when I started, the module, you know, at a university was quite short. I mean, this is also the way that we are kind of taught. We are educated, especially in fashion. You know, it's a short project. You need to have an outcome. But obviously, lichens are extremely slow growing, and there isn't a way that you can speed up the process. But also, how ethically it would be like to speed up a process of a living organism. But anyway, then another for with a slime mold, for example, another like a really big issue to overcome was the fact that the slime mold doesn't have a solid body. It doesn't. It's a slimy. It's like not liquid, but so it's, you know, you'll have to create, was about to create like a surface or you know, what we're 3D printing as well. So it was about to giving a body, the bones to this living organism, in order to shape it into a garment, in my case. So obviously you've seen like a few experiments, but before to get there, you know, there were lots of trial and fail, and really worried that, you know, I wouldn't end up with anything at all. But yes, so I think that all different challenges, all different problems and issues depending by the material, living organism that you are working with. Yes, so it depends.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I completely relate to that. I mean, you say that the lichen grows at what we might call glacial speed, in that it grows so slowly you can't even see it, can you, from season to season. I'd say, actually, I think from observing in the garden, probably a lichen, you will notice the growth over a year or so, won't you, a year or 2 years, but certainly not at the pace that fashion is normally operating. And then the slime molds, I always think of, I actually think of them like the creature in Alien, in that they're moving around, they're oozing around the place, aren't they? And although there is an innate intelligence to their movements, and obviously that they're looking for food, they nonetheless have this agency, and they're obviously moving very quickly, and there's an uncontrollability about them in that they can break out in the direction they want to. And that, I think, is a really key point that you're hitting on there. It's the fact that when you're working with biomaterials, you're working with the different spatial and temporal dimensions of these things. So each and every living organism, each and every, you know, material has different properties. So as a designer, you're having to adapt, to shape shift your practice to work with these different organisms.
I totally agree. It's exactly like that. There is any other way around, so it's there.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, you know, when you were talking about this sort of risk factor, I was thinking then about the fact that when you're looking at, for example, the kind of projects that are going on at other institutions that are working with biomaterials, biodesign, etc., like UCL and the Bartlett, and it comes to reviewing the student projects, there's often that point when you're sort of doing a review at maybe 3 months or 6 months in, the sort of end of the first term, end of the second term, when there's this panic, because when you're living, you know, working with these organisms, you can't always see that end outcome. Luckily, the projects will always come together right at the end. they will get there. But you do have this uncertainty, which I think as a designer is a great challenge, isn't it? Because this isn't like design of old, where you can plan it out, you can know exactly how your material is going to behave right at the outset. You're having to do this experiment. You're having to actually go with the flow of whatever your materials are doing.
So true, and it is like well, I remember I was really, when I started working with slime mold especially, and I was also, I mean, part of my job also, I like the idea of speculating as well, like looking at the living organism, look at the way it grows, try to reproduce it perhaps with other material. But at some point I remember my tutor, amazing tutor, Zoe Broch, she was like, well, you have to go for it. I mean, you need to use the real slime mold, and you really need to do it. And honestly, like for a time, I had kind of nightmares because I was like, I'm not gonna get anything at all at the end of the day. And I was trying, experimenting, and I was like, this is not taking anywhere at all. It's not taking me anywhere at all. Until it did happen. And obviously, I don't know, it's quite recurrent in my in all the projects that I work, but I allow myself also to kind of make mistakes, because sometimes the mistake will inform, the right trajectory, the right direction. So, so yes, like keeping an open-minded, but at first it was quite scary. Also because at the end of the day, you have to, you are in an education, and at the end of the day, they are going to mark you. So you need an outcome, because the way that, especially in fashion, textile, and design, you need an outcome at the end of the day. And in biodesign, there is a chance that you may end up with nothing. So that was a bit scary, but I have to say it went down really well. I'm really happy of what I achieved, and I'm still thanking, Zoe to really push me, to say like, look, go for it. Don't worry. If you fail, you fail. But also, another thing, so there was this fear of, failing, especially that comes, with biodesign. But I also, I'm kind of overcome it in a sense that I'm realizing, and also chatting with other friends, scientist friends as well, that at the end of the day, even if you end up with nothing at all, the knowledge that you gain, that's your real outcome. So it may not be like a tangible, a garment, but it might be the knowledge. It could be in a book, and your book could be like, your final outcome. So, so I think I kind of, overcoming that fear. I don't think I have that fear anymore about, okay, exploring biodesign, I'm not going to end up anything at all. But I think as long as you have the work done, whether the experiment fails or not, you still have your outcome. So yeah.
I think you're absolutely right there. I mean, I think the key thing with this is you are the school of biodesign is about designing processes. It's about understanding the processes. You may get a great outcome, you might not, but the knowledge that you are building is really important. And as long as you capture that knowledge and you document it in the same way a scientist would, then you're adding to that knowledge. When I was looking at your slime mold project, I was looking at the fabric, and I was thinking it works great as a textile design. I can't believe I didn't spot that myself, because I've worked with slime mold, I've done textile design, so I was like, wow, that looks really good. How many sort of different surfaces, how many different, if you like, canvases for your slime molds did you have to experiment before you found the right one? Because obviously you tried a few
To be honest,
things.
everything I was finding in my hands, I was like, let's try. I think it was really the more the better, because I didn't really know. I mean, I knew the conditions that, the living organism should be kept, and, the fact that you have to feed them with certain food sources. But there isn't really like an instruction booklet that tells you, okay, you do this, this, and that, and it will work. No. So it was really about trying as much as possible and hoping that something would work. So I think, yes, I mean, you might have seen a few, but before that, there has been like lots of, I try also bioplastics. I try really everything. but obviously the surface that I'm working with, it will need to be treated as well. For example, the one that looks more like a fabric is actually a fabric that it's been treated with agar and food sources, so it has everything it needs for the slime mold to grow. Yeah.
And you know, I love that, you know, when you're talking about swatches, because historically, as a fashion designer, you would order your swatches and they'd arrive. Let's say you were thinking about using a silk, you might have 30 different swatches arrive, and you look at them and you feel them and you think, oh, well, I work with this one or that one. But in this process, you're looking at them and then you're like, hang on a minute, I've just got to run them by the organism. So you've got to try your organism on the different swatches to work out. So it really is a collaborative process. It's you working with the organism.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't like it, then
exactly.
no
At the end of the day, they decide. They decide where they want to go. So you need to work in the way that they are happy with. So yes, it is like a collaboration, and it is about also, you know, the ethos of, you know, of my work in general in biodesign. It is about collaborating with nature, understanding it, and collaborating with it. Yeah.
I think the other quality about your work, you don't really hear the term biocouture much, but I think that your work very much embodies that. And I think that's a really interesting proposition, because when we think about couture, we think about a unique garment. And we think about something that there's a one-off, it is tailored to that individual. It might be designed aesthetically for the individual in the sense that the colors, the design features, but certainly every single piece is unique. And with your work, when you're working with these organisms, I'm thinking particularly of the lichen work, every single piece is unique because the organism's unique, aren't they? So you've got this genuine, you've got a biocouture proposition. And that, I mean, it makes me think to the value, because one of the great difficulties for biofashion is the fact that it's working to such different parameters to the rest of the fashion industry. It's working to different timescales. It's working to you know, different values in terms of the amount of resources that go into it, the sort of longevity of the piece. There's all these different metrics that don't fit with the sort of classic fashion models for marketing, the sort of couture, pret-a-porter, fast fashion market, etc. But I'm thinking your work is adding that value through the uniqueness of the fact that there's only one of those pieces, even if the differences are relatively small.
Yeah,
each piece is unique.
Thank you. But also, yes, and I think really important as well, the element of craft. And I think, which is, I think, fundamental in everything I do, but also in general in couture. So if I think about traditional couture, I immediately think about craft. And I think about, you know, lots of hours spent on a single garment to make that garment unique, with like perhaps a technique that nowadays have been lost because, you know, you just need a pair of trousers today, right? The functionality. So it is about, in the same way, with biodesign, I feel there is an element of craft in the sense that, you know, it's not about sewing. I mean, obviously I start with the material, but, you know, the element of craft that goes into the material, understanding the material, the living organism, that's for me like probably a new way to, you know, to craft, let's say, craft with science, and yes, and then obviously adapt, you know, it adds to the whole idea of couture as well. Obviously, uniqueness of the garment, but as well the time that has been behind experimenting and you know, crafting the living garment, for example. So yes, it's a lot lot of elements, obviously, and that's also the reason why I call it couture. It's not just like, okay, I'm designing a pair of trousers, I'm gonna buy the fabric and make it. No, I think it goes beyond that.
Absolutely. And I think, what's interesting, there's obviously a number of different individuals that are working with biomaterials and biodesign for fashion and apparel and accessories are featured in this series. And there are some very different ideas about the kind of scaling and the operational side of the business, as it were. So some are thinking in terms of what we would think of as ready to wear, wherein it's a scenario in which, you're going to have big reams, as it were, of biomaterials created that designers are going to then work within a more industrialized context. But your work, I mean, I'm sort of in my head visualizing, when we think to somebody like the late Karl Lagerfeld had a network of artisanal craftspersons, lace specialists, embroidery specialists, all these different experts in these different things. So he'd create the collection, he'd design the collection, and then he would draw on this big network of experts in these traditional crafts. And I'm thinking with your work, what I'm picturing here is your studio, and there's you and you're conceiving these collections, and you've got these craftspeople, but they're sort of bio-craftspersons in that they know how to work with the different organisms in different ways to create these sort of different bio laces or whatever it might be. I think that's incredibly exciting. Can you see that sort of future vision for your business? Is that how you see it? Something else?
That's exactly how I picture it, yes.
You definitely can.
Yes. I think we are on the same line. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
new
exactly how I pictured. In ateliers / lab where there are all of those skills, coming together. So yeah, that's exactly how I picture it, and I'm hoping to get there soon.
Yeah. And where do you think, I mean, one of the things I think I sort of, thinking about is the geography of this, because obviously when we think to the historical fashion industry, we think to London, Paris, Milan, New York. Yes, we know there are lots of other things going on elsewhere, but those are the big centres. Do you think that there are some places that are going to better serve this vision that you have for your bio-couture atelier, or do you think this could be something that could emerge in a number of places?
I think could definitely emerge in a lot of other places. That I think for sure. I think London right now, I think there is probably more opportunity for someone that wants to explore biodesign. It could be London or maybe New York. But those are the kind of right now, like you ask me, I will say probably those two cities right now, I feel they're probably more engaged compared to the others. But anyway, saying that, I also seen lots of interest coming from everywhere. I mean, so I'm pretty sure that it will happen in a lots of different hubs around Europe, around the world. And also probably not necessarily in big cities too. And I'm pretty sure, with the technologies that we have today, with social media and so on, you don't really need to be in big cities. You can be anywhere, and as long you are connect, people knows about your work, about who you are, what you do. So it's not necessarily you need to be like in a big city. And I'm pretty sure that in future will be more and more like that, which I think is good, actually better. Yeah.
The sort of localized, and I guess the great about that is that I mean, one of the things we've sort of seen these waves with the fashion industry, and that we went, as globalization initially occurred, we saw trends go global, and it was all, oh right, whatever the hot shades are this season, they are everywhere, they're ubiquitous. Now we've gone into reverse in that when we look to the fashion trends of the world, we've got so many different influences coming in, culturally, sort of economically, that it's quite a mixed scene, isn't it? I mean, if I were to think of the sort of the colours that have really sort of pushed through this season, hot pink, even at the coronation, hot pink, dotted, which I thought was poetic because, you know, that's come from obviously the Barbie movie, so the cultural influence of Barbie the movie was actually expressed at coronation. But that was unusual because there aren't that many instances in contemporary fashion where a trend goes that global. So now it's like we've reverted into localization, into diversity. And certainly if we're thinking about the sort of the emergence of these new biocrafts, these new ways of working with nature to create fabrics and details of fabrics and so forth, that could be really exciting because obviously the different localities are going to be working with different biodiversity, aren't they, in different conditions. So they're going to have these different things emerge.
It is about like, and I'm really interested, like, for example, like local species. For example, if I'm thinking about, okay, what do we have available in UK? What can we use? What living species we can use? Which material we think it's available? So the kind of local, idea of using local material, local living organism, I think it should be, it should be highlighted a little bit more. And I'm also sure that in the future, again, it will be probably more. And I think there is already, I mean, for example, especially in the food industry, I'm thinking, okay, there is a lot about, restaurants using like local food and local things connected with sustainability. So why not doing the same with fashion too? So yes, and probably if you are in UK and today and you have, I don't know, a garment made with a local species of lichens, you go to New York and you see someone wearing something completely, with a species that it's not available here. Thinking about, I don't know, far ahead. But
diversity, the biodiverse fashion,
and also why do we need to all wearing the same thing or the same trend? I mean, this is something as well that I never really understood. I mean, should we really be more about, be about who we are, like, rather than following a certain trend, community? I don't know. I think it should be more about the, individuality, in a sense, express. I mean, also fashion, it is about expressing yourself. But at the end of the day, you go to a shop and then you see, big racks of the same garments where everybody, you will probably find someone that have your same garment. So, where is the part of individuality as well? So obviously, yes, you can mix and match all your garments that become like really different. But yeah, I don't know, just an idea that came to my mind.
I think that's really interesting because when you think about costume, I mean, historically, couture is associated with an individual style. It's associated with people that have a sense of self. They feel the sense to invest in their garments. They know that a well-tailored bespoke piece can make you look $1 million. But also, I suppose the irony of fashion is that when you look at the fashion icons, when you think of the Karl Lagerfeld, the Gabrielle Chanel's, the Diana Vreelands, etc., they all had a very, very strong sense of style. They would wear, I mean, Anna Wintour, they wear a very particular look. Has Anna Wintour changed her haircut in what, about 30 years? No, we know Anna Wintour by the bob and by the shades. That's her ID. She knows exactly what her style is. And I think that kind of has a relation to the market, because of course what fast fashion was about pushing these individual looks, pushing people to buy different things. Now, you will be a sucker for that if you're not sure what your sense of self is, your sense of identity. You're trying to work out who you are, what you're about. You're trying to conform. You don't want to sort of stand out from the crowd. But if you have a strong sense of self, you will feel quite comfortable wearing your own look, walking into a room knowing your look is different to everybody else's look, but it's your look. You own it. And so there is this relationship, I think, between, obviously, we've got what designers are doing. We've got what society is doing, we've got what the buyers are doing, we've got the retailers are doing. But in this equation, because of the fact that you cannot flog fast fashion through this sort of by design, by material model, because everything is unique, everything is bespoke. So you've got to have that uniqueness. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But, you know, certainly when I think to the biocouture customer, I think the biocouture customer is going to know what they want, what their look is. They're going to be confident to rock it regardless of whatever, you know, the trend forecasters are trying to get people to wear.
Yes, yes, I agree with you, and but I also, but because you mentioned, okay, mass production and fast fashion, so I'm thinking that that's also like some of my thoughts when I'm thinking, okay, how, because most of the times, you know, you're asked, okay, you work in fashion, and ideally you will have to produce, enough. So the idea of producing a lot and scaling up, I don't know, it's something that it really makes me wonder. So, and that's also one of the reason I done more about the couture and the idea of bespoke and something individual, something that is craft for you, something that has a value, something that you can appreciate. Perhaps, you know, you wouldn't discard as quick as you know, a pair of trousers that you bought for 10, 20 pounds, for example. Which is also the idea behind, for example, Grow Your Own Couture, and the idea to have, you know, the user actually part of the process, where, you know, he has this DIY kit, fashion kit, where he can actually create and grow his own garment, nurture his own garment, creating a bond with his own garment, so that, you know, almost like a plant. And I'm quite fond of my plants, for example, so I would never think to throw them away. They're living things. So, you know, this kind of relationship with it, which goes totally on a total different direction than mass production and this idea of scaling up. So, but also those are, you know, because those are also the things that you're usually asked for if you're a business, and they're kind of, you know, that's probably the most obvious direction to take. So I don't know.
You know, I'm thinking as you're speaking here, I'm thinking usually the classic route for, let's say, a couture house would be decades ago, somebody that's now long dead created the couture house. And that's the brand. That's the sort of essence of the brand. And that brand has their annual collections where they're basically making a statement about this is what we're about. Then obviously they monetize that brand through the mass produced goods, handbags, whatever it might be, of which the ultimate is typically perfume and makeup. So they've got this sort of, they've got the bespoke end and then they've got the mass production end. I'm sort of visualizing your future business as in you've got your network of artisanal bio crafts people. So this is your couture end. And then I'm sort of, just from what you were saying there, when you said about individuals actually making their own DIY, I was thinking about, you know, when you get, let's say there are food companies now that will send you the recipes and all the ingredients in a box. And so it's very hard to go wrong, because they've told you this is what you've got to do, and these are the exact measurements of the things that you need to put together to make your dish. I'm kind of picturing your pret-a-porter range being sent out to the customer in a box, a little lab, little lab in a box where they grow their outfit. I don't know if it's a viable thing, but it opens up this sort of possibility of these whole new ways of engaging with the consumer engaging with the thing, and getting more hands-on and getting more creative.
I do, yes, I like it, but also that's the reason why I think for a couple of projects, for the one and also for Bioscent, I use the kit, and I think it's a really good way for people to engage, you know, with the product, but also understanding what's behind the creation of a certain product. Because most of the times, again, you buy something, but you don't really know the work that it goes behind a specific product item or a design piece or an art piece. So, you know, perhaps, I don't know, as a form of also education, appreciating, you know, what whatever you're gonna buy it, give them a value. Because I feel most of the times we just see those garments coming, but we don't really know where they're coming from, how they're made, the time that you made it, that it took you. And I feel if people start to understanding what's behind and what's behind the design process, in general, whether it's biodesign or non-biodesign, I think you will probably appreciate it more, and you will think twice again before you discard or you throw away your garment, your table, or whatever you bought it. So, yes, probably, you know, it will help to give a value as well to the actual piece.
I completely agree with you. I think because, you know, what people don't realize, I'm a terrible seamstress. So I would only ever, back when I did design, I'd make up a few of the samples, then I'd hand it to the experts. But it does amaze me, you know, when you walk into a high street retailer and you say, pick up a t-shirt and it's say £5. And you know that when you take out the cost of the fabric, the shipping, the retail upgrades, etc., you know that the seamstress has only been paid a tiny amount. I don't know, maybe 25 pence for sewing up that garment. Highly skilled job, not valued. And yet, when you look, let's say, I mean, this platform, Instagram, when you look at the amount of money that some of the influencers are being paid to sell garments, they are valued proportionate to their time more than the people that actually make the stuff, is the bottom line here. And I think a lot of that has to do with this lack of appreciation, as you say, of what's actually involved in that skill. And if people could get hands-on, actually do it, then that might change their perceptions of where the money should be going and of how it should be going there. So I really like that idea of, you know, people through one or another way. I know right now, Biomaterialista, she's got a great little business going. She's from South America. She's in the UK. She's been touring across Europe, setting up biomaterial workshops where people can come along, they can make biomaterial, then she'll show them how to make it into a thing like a handbag or something. You know, really great idea. And I'm thinking these are the kind of ways, through your work, the whole community's work, that knowledge sharing might happen.
I think it is about that. It's about community. It is about care. It is yes. So for a better future, obviously. But yes, but also I think, you know, biodesign in general, it has this kind of, I don't know, it's kind of, I would say, intrinsically connected with the idea also of sustainability. In a way that not only about to create the product product that is made with, with a living organism, not just about that, but also in a way that you think while you're designing. So yes, obviously that, it needs to get along as well with a lots of other things. It's not just the product itself, but it's a lots of other layers that should be added on, society and everything. But yes, so it's not just about the product. So there are different things, and the community. I think the community is one of them. So yeah, like a product that obviously where a community could benefit from, whether it's about the creation or where it's about the usage of the product, but could benefit an environment, a community of people, from health to well-being, from well-being, but also from an economic point of view. So yes, yeah.
Yeah, you can see that. Now, historically, when we think of a couture show, or actually any of the big shows, the big fashion shows, the crowning moment is the wedding dress. And it strikes me, this is perfect for biocouture, because classically, of course, the wedding dress is ideally worn once by the bride herself. Because obviously, hopefully, the couple are going to remain married. Now, obviously, wedding dresses can be upcycled, they can be sent secondhand, they can be sold. But it strikes me that, the wedding dress would be the ideal biomaterial, biodesign piece.
You wear it once.
It's you wear it once, and then, hey, you send it to the compost heap or whatever happens with it. If you were tasked with the job of creating a couture wedding dress, what material would you choose of all the ones that you've made stuff with to work with?
Well, I will probably, maybe won't be very popular, but I will say maybe slime mold, just because it really represents, the ephemeral life of this living organism, which grows, has its own life cycle, and you wear it, and then slowly will kind of fade away, dying out. So I think it has that kind of idea of, I don't want to say mono-use, but this kind of idea that you have a garment, you wear it once, and then slowly it biodegrades and goes back into its natural environment. So, and I thinking about, the slime mold life, I feel that it kind of fits well on that, short time frame. So I think, I don't know if the bride will be happy with wearing lots of slime.
What if she works in
wearing slime mold? but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other great thing about the slime mold, is all the designs would be unique, but you'd know that in that moment, even on that day, the configuration of the slime mold is going to be unique, isn't it? There's only one day when the slime mold's actually going to be in that pattern on the garment.
Exactly.
And then it's going to shift.
constant change, the patterns that it creates. You go, I don't know, at 12 p.m. it looks in a certain way, and you go after a couple of hours and it's completely different. So yes, I think that definitely it could be very, very interesting. But it creates these beautiful natural patterns by itself. So it's really amazing looking at them, and just I think I'm surprised every time that I see this organism growing into shapes that I was like, oh wow, that's incredible. So yeah.
I want someone to commission you now. I want to see a double page Italian
Yeah.
Vogue, ideally, with a slime mold wedding dress. This would just be beautiful. Having worked with this genre now for quite a while, what for you has been the biggest challenge? What is the thing that has made this more difficult than it might otherwise be?
I will probably say apply this into a business, in a sense. I mean, how do you apply what I'm doing by design into fashion, into how can I say, which is very traditional. It's a very traditional thing. So how do you, it's a bit of a struggle, because obviously you need a product in a traditional fashion idea of making fashion. You need a product, and so that I think was probably the most challenging, because like I said before, most of the times you end up with something that it's not a product yet, with slime mold or with lichens. You are at the stage that you didn't I never consider my project as final, first of all, but for example, I'm in a point where I haven't got it yet to how can I say, let me give an example, maybe like silk. We know how silk, the actual where it comes from. We know that from silk cocoon you can actually creating you have a fiber and you can create a thread, and then from the thread you can create like a cloth. But with what I'm doing right now, it's like feeling already still kind of at the cocoon stage, when you know that you can create something with that, but you haven't quite figured out yet how to make it into a proper product that it's sellable, wearable in a way that we think wearable today, washable and so on. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge, because most of the times you are working with something that it's super interesting, amazing, but that it's not a product itself. And how do you, if you want to make business in the present days, you have to apply what you have into the present. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. As you were speaking there, I was thinking that when I speak with companies in the biodesign and biomaterials sector, not so much biomaterials, because most of the biomaterial companies, for example, those that are making things like bricks out of mushrooms or mushroom packaging, things like this, what they're actually doing is they're extracting processes and material systems from nature that they are then using in a way that fits with elements of the pre-existing business and services models. So they're creating, if you like, things that can slot in and that therefore you can monetize, hence why Biomason, the biocement company, raised tens of millions of dollars for their latest investment round. But when you look to many of the companies and the projects that are genuinely going back to the drawing board, that are actually not trying to augment the pre-existing business models, then they're not working without saying, no, they are broken. We've actually got to go back. If we're really going to do things the way that the natural world would, we've got to work with different time scales. We've got to work with different relationships, different material properties. So we've got to design something completely new. And it is not aligned with the current systems of investment, of finance, of retail, of distribution. None of that. It's very, very difficult to align any of the really radical stuff with that. And what I think we're lacking now is we're lacking a research unit that is very specifically looking at how we design those new systems, the new economy, the bioeconomy, in a way that is going to accommodate the needs of businesses like yours at the timescales that are necessary. And I think that's going to take a lot of specialist expertise, but expertise that is not so, it's not so, if you like, so embedded in the current systems that it's going to try and mimic them, but it's going to say, no, we've got to genuinely design these systems from the grassroots upwards. That's what we need right now, and that's what we don't have. And it would be really interesting to see the Royal College of Art, Central St Martin's, etc., actually collaborating with institutions to try and do this, because I think that's what the businesses are crying out for right now. So I totally relate to what you're saying there. Now we've got time for 2 more questions. So we've got 2 standard questions. You know what they are because I gave you a heads up. The first one, the year is 2050 and biomaterials, biodesign, lots of amazing things have happened. What do you see by mid-century in terms of where these sectors could take us?
I would see, probably like I mentioned at the beginning, like you know, having this lots and lots established bio atelier where lots of you know, artisans and biodesigners and designers from different, you know, from different backgrounds, they all come together, you know, creating the products of the future, and perhaps bioeconomists too, you know, like a real, like you said, maybe with them as well, being creative, finding a solution in, you know, in those fields, and on how, you know, the economic system as well could change, and maybe that one as well will be more in tune with nature, will be inspired by nature. So yeah, so yes, maybe I don't know if it's maybe too early, too ambitious for 2050, but yeah, I would.
So yours is a beautiful future where we've got many different artisanal studios, these crafts people that are working with living organisms in all sorts of wonderful and different ways, localized ways, working with local species, lots of diversity. That's really beautiful. We haven't had that vision so far, so that is really gorgeous. And the next question is, if you could have one wish, just one wish for you, your studio, the whole sector, what would it be?
Maybe to, you know, have the right recipe to make, you know, to make that vision that we were talking about happening sooner than later. Probably that, before 2050, to make it happen before 2050.
Before 2050. Yeah, I think ideally before 2030. Yeah, so there's only so long that this community can sort of, I mean, what most people are doing is they're self-funding or they're applying for grants that are very hand to mouth. And as we know, this sector has so much potential. It's tackling so many different problems, social, environmental, and it hasn't got the funding it needs right now, and it hasn't got the support. So yes, we definitely, I think, need to that. So we've got we've got a compliment here. His work is amazing. Can't wait to see the new collection. Can't we all? Do go and see Piero's work. He's got a beautiful website with his latest creations on. Do keep me up to date with what you're doing. I'd love to see your latest pieces. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you.
You've got many unique. You've brought many unique ideas to the table. So I wish you the absolute best of luck on everything you're working on. And I hope to see
Thank you
your
so
work in the
much.
flesh
Thank
soon.
you.